Lesson 5.4, Factor and Solve Polynomial Equations. So for example, a manufacturer shipping cartons needs to make cartons for specific use, has used special relationships in length, width, height, and volume to find the dimensions of the carton. That can be done with polynomial equations. So we're looking at how factoring can be used to solve such equations. How to factor. First of all, factor out the greatest common factor. This comes from the distributive property. You're going to undistribute something. The same number of variables in each of the terms, you can bring the number to the front times everything that is left. For example, let's factor this one. Notice in each of the terms, all the numbers are factorable by 3. Each of the terms also has an x and a y. So let's factor out 3xy. In the first term, what's left if the 3 and one of the x's is gone, and a y is just one of the x's. If I factor out a 3, I'll have 2, because 3 times 2 makes 6. The x and the y are factored out. Here, that if I do 9 divided by 3, I get the 3. So 3 times negative 3 is 9. So I have a negative 3 left. The x is out. One of the y's is out. So this is what's left. Look for the greatest common factor first. After you've done the greatest common factor, count the number of terms. If there are 2 terms, you need to look for special patterns, such as the difference of squares. Here's an example for difference of squares. Notice the 9x squared is the same as 3 squared and x squared, and y to the 4th is the same as y squared squared. So this is the difference of squares where the a is 3x and the b is y squared. So it factors to be a minus b, a plus b, so it's 3x minus y squared, 3x plus y squared. It's the sum of 2 cubes. For this example, 8x cubed plus 27. Notice 8 is 2 cubed and 27 is 3 cubed. So it's a sum of 2 cubes where a is 2x and b is 3. So fill in the formula with 2x and 3. So a is 2x, b is 3, filled in those. And now simplify the squareds. So we're going to do 2x squared would be 4x squared. This will be negative 6x, and that'll be 9. And now it's factored. We also have a difference of 2 cubes, which is like the sum of 2 cubes. We just have, this has become a minus, and that's become a plus. So this will be y cubed minus 2 cubed. So a is y, b is 2. Fill in the formula, and there you are. You need to memorize these formulas. It's the only way to factor them easily. So again, for factoring, the first step is to check for common factors. Second step is count the terms. If there are 3 terms, it's a general trinomial, such as quadratic. So to factor these, we did that last chapter. So it's 2 sets of parentheses. And then you guess and check. The first part of each of the parentheses, multiply to make the first, the ax squared. The last part of each parenthesis, multiply to make the c, the last part of the trinomial. The outers plus the inners make the bx. So you guess the ax squared and you guess the c. So you guess the first, guess the last, and then you check with the inners plus the outers. So let's factor this one. So there's definitely 3 terms. We have 2 sets of parentheses. Then you say what times what makes the x squared? Well, that'd be x times x. Then what times what makes this 10? I don't know. How about 2 times 5? And then let's check. Have the outers and the inners. So the outers are 2x. The inners are 5x. 2x plus 5x makes 7x, which is the center here. So that is correct. Let's try factoring this one. It's 3 terms, 2 sets of parentheses. Say, what times what makes 6x squared? How about 3x times 2x? And what times what makes negative 20? How about 4 and negative 5? Now, if you don't get the right answer the first time, that's okay. Just erase it and try something else. That's why it's called guess and check. If your first guess is wrong, guess something else. Check the outers plus the inners. So outers, be negative 15x. Inners are 8x. So negative 15x plus 8x is negative 7x. That is what we have in the middle. So that means it is done correctly. So when you factor, the first thing to do is check for common factors. Then the second step is to count the number of terms. If there are 4 terms, you'll factor by grouping. You group the terms into 2 sets of 2. So then you can factor a common factor out of each set. Then you factor the factored sets. So essentially you're factoring twice. Here's an example. Group. So I group the first 2 and the last 2. Something to point out. This is a minus 2b. I left the minus with the 2b and put a plus between my groups. So it's still b cubed minus b squared minus 2b plus 6. Always have a plus here. So if it's a minus, always make it plus a negative. Factor each of the groups. So out of the first group, I can factor a b squared. Out of the second group, I can factor a negative 2. So the first group factored out the b squared. Second group factored out a negative 2. 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. Notice now I have a b minus 3 in both terms. So I now factor out a b minus 3. I'm left with, so I have b minus 3, and then the b squared minus the 2. So to factor, the first thing to look for is the common factors. Then you count the terms. After you factored that, try factoring more. So here's some more factoring examples. Hey, look, the only numbers are the squares and the exponents. Fun. So look for a common factor. I don't see any. This is missing an a, this is missing a b, that's missing an x, this is missing a y, so there's no common factors. Count the terms. There are 4 terms, so we factor by grouping. Group the first 2 and the last 2. In the first group, I can factor out an x. In the second group, I can factor out a y. Now notice, we've got this a squared minus b squared in both of our remaining terms. So factor that out. So we have a squared minus b squared times the x plus y. And then we have to try factoring more. So we look at this and say, oh, we have some squares. Oh, that looks like a difference of squares. There's 2 terms. We look, and it's difference of squares. So difference of squared is a squared minus b squared is a minus b, a plus b. And then the x plus y was still there. We can't factor any more now because we have no more squares. Let's try this one. First thing to look for is the common factor. Oh, there's a z in both. And the numbers are both divisible by 3. So let's factor out a 3z. And that leaves me an a squared minus 9, because 27 divided by 3 is 9. So we try factoring some more. So in the parentheses, we can count there's 2 terms, which means we look for special patterns. Since it's minus and the a squared, it's a difference. A squared is a squared minus 3 squared. So that'd be a minus 3, a plus 3. And the 3z is still there. Let's try this one. Common factor? Nope, there isn't any. So count the terms. There's 2 terms. We need special pattern. Well, it's not cubed. It's actually squared. So what's the difference of squares? It'll actually be n squared squared minus 9 squared. So it's the difference of squares where the a is n squared and the b is 9. So it'll be n squared minus 9, n squared plus 9. And then you try factoring some more. Oh, look, n squared minus 9 is also a difference of squares. It's n squared minus 3 squared. So it'll be n minus 3, n plus 3. The n squared plus 9 is not factorable because there is no sum of squares formula, just a difference of squares. So that's our final answer. So to solve equations by factoring, you make the equation equal 0, so you move everything to one side. Then you factor, and then you make each factor equal to 0, because if one of the factors is 0, 0 times anything equals 0. So it doesn't matter what the other thing is as long as one of the factors is 0. So here, let's solve this one. Let's move everything to one side, so subtract the 18x. And then factor. And the first step for factoring is common factor. Hey, everything's divisible by 2 and an x. So let's factor out 2x. Factor out 2x. I'm left with x to the 4th minus 9. Try factoring more. Oh, that's the difference of squares. That's x squared minus 3 squared. So it's x squared minus 3, x squared plus 3. So now I take each of those factors equal to 0. So I'll have 2x equals 0, x squared minus 3 equals 0, and x squared plus 3 equals 0. Solve each of those. The first one, divide by 2, you get x equals 0. Second and third one, I'm going to add 3 or subtract 3. And then take a square root. When you're solving, you take a square root. Don't forget to put plus and minus. And over here, when I take a square root of negative 3, square root of a negative is I. So our answers are 0, plus and minus square root of 3, plus and minus square root of 3 times I. And that's all there is for today. Have a good day.